Hey guys, Mr. Talbot here for you. We're going to give you your notes over topic 6.1, which is decolonization. We know what colonization is when, we got one country taking over territories somewhere else and kind of controlling their politics and their economy and whatnot. This is going to be the reverse of that, but we're going to see some challenges along the way. This is all kind of coming after the two world wars. We're going to see it kind of take place a little bit after World War One, then really, really pick up speed after World War Two, particularly across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Remember, Latin America has already kind of got its independence, but we're going to see there's some challenges there as well. There kind of becomes following the Second World War this like big push to go away from imperialism, go away from empires and to get to new independent states. Remember, this is something that had led to some of those earlier conflicts. And so now we're going to see it kind of spread more to Africa and Asia in particular. People like Nasser in Egypt, Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam, Gandhi are kind of push for these independence. Hey Britain, hey France, you shouldn't influence anymore with your own country. And so really what kind of spurs, these aren't new ideas, but World War II kind of really was an accelerator to this. Following the First World War, Britain and France are still really, really influential in the kind of, in like the club of the most powerful countries in the world. And they're still very, very popular after World War II, but following World War II, it's pretty much the United States and the Soviet Union are the two superpowers of the world, and what they say kind of goes. Um, and both the U.S. and the Soviet Union are kind of anti-empire. So this and Britain and France have got their own problems at home following World War II that they kind of need to focus on them and not so much their empires. You got China, who's in the midst of a civil war, so they're certainly not looking to expand an empire. You've also got to deal with the fact that the three big losers of the war, Germany, Italy, and Japan, all had colonies. Well, you're not going to let them keep the colonies after you beat them in this war. So what are you going to do with them now? Are you going to jump in and say, okay, you were Japan's colony, but now you're the U.S.'s colony? Or are you going to say, okay, now you can kind of do your own thing and be an independent country? So we're going to see some places are going to negotiate their independence. We're going to see that in places like India, but then we're going to see some violent uprisings in places like Vietnam. And part of what also accelerates, particularly in the Pacific and East Asia and Southeast Asia, that pushes this independence movement along, is the experience of World War II. Vietnam, for example, had been a French colony. Well, the French are not able to protect Vietnam from Japan. The Philippines have been kind of the little brother of the United States. The United States haven't been able to protect the Philippines. So, these people in these parts of Asia are saying, as colonies, that we're supposed to benefit from being your colony, but you didn't protect us. So why should we continue to be a colony if you're not going to, help us out when we really need your help? From the European perspective, it's, well, we definitely agree what Japan did there was wrong. So, you know, wouldn't it be wrong if we made them our colonies? But the flip side is there's an economic benefit to having the colonies. So there's that you're having to weigh as well. Um, so again, we talked about the U.S. and Soviet Union are kind of the big superpowers. You're going to see more of that in our next topic. And they're kind of anti empires from the U.S. perspective. We're the Godfather. We got rid of the British and became an independent country. So we don't believe in empires, but we still like to have influence. We're now this dominant economy in the world, and we want to make sure people are kind of working in our benefit. But we also say we want to help. That line the U.S. is going to be trying to walk here of we're the big brother protector, or are you turning to the big brother telling the little brother what to do and kind of bullying them to meet your own needs? From the Soviet perspective, they don't want to have their own empire, but they want to be really influential. Their ideology, their belief is that all the workers of the world are going to rise up in revolution. And that's the leader, but everyone, all of the workers need to have the power, which means we can't have an empire. So when the two superpowers are kind of saying no to empire, um, it really puts their former allies in Britain and France saying, well, you probably need to figure out a way to grant some independence to your colonies. So we'll see kind of as this kicks in, and you can kind of see on the map here the years that these different places are going to get independent. And you don't need to memorize this by any means, but really seeing across huge chunks of Africa and Asia, were controlled by the Europeans. And, in the case of the Philippines, kind of the Americans. After World War II, you can really see the pace of independence really, really picks up. So, kind of just recapping a few things here, these European empires seemed permanent in the year 1900. They had just divided up Africa. You just kind of, taken over large chunks of China. But, within really 60 years, most of it's gone. And again, the big thing that happens between there are the two world wars. We're going to see the breakup of the Ottoman Empire after World War One. That's going to have some big influences in the Middle East. But like we talked about with, the Japanese Empire, too. And so the Philippines are kind of a good example here from, American kind of little brother protectorate, essentially a colony of the United States. You know, the Philippines, were taken over by Japan, and the U.S. was like, well, yeah, Philippines, I mean, look how close we are to Japan. We can't protect you. We're all the way over here. The Philippines are like, yeah, hence why we should be an independent country. You shouldn't have control over us. And so when we think about those war crimes that these people in Southeast Asia have to go through at the hands of the Japanese, it really puts, this big nationalist movement that says no one else can look out for us. We've got to look out for ourselves. And so we're going to see uprisings in the Philippines. We're going to see uprisings in what here is labeled French Indochina. We now today refer to as Vietnam, but also in India and Indonesia. And Korea is going to be a kind of a separate issue we're going to see in our Cold War topic. You've got kind of what's going on there that's going to be influencing this push for independence. But you've also got these Western countries that are, supposed to be enlightened that are saying, well, you know, this kind of goes against our beliefs having empires. And then so Americans saying, we need to have self-determination. But you can't have self-determination and colonies. You got to pick one. So we're going to see more of a support for self-determination. Again, the U.S. is still going to want influence. The U.S. is still going to want allies. No longer can the Europeans say, "Hey, we're number one. We're going to help you out," because you just got shown by the Japanese that you're not number one, and you're not going to help out if need be. Like I said, the U.S. and Soviet Union are against empires, but want that influence. And then the final thing is we've got this new organization called the United Nations, which stated goals is to promote cooperation between nations, to promote human rights. And again, what we've seen in places like Africa, colonialism was going against human rights. So there's now a push within this international body to get rid of colonies. And so as this pressure builds up, the British are put under, this pressure to get rid of it by, um, the rest of the world and within their own country saying we need to focus on ourselves. What we're doing is not enlightened, it's wrong. So you're going to see some push to, try and, in India's case, help build up their industry and help them have elections and write constitutions. But really, we're going to see how the reforms don't move very quickly, and it leads to more violent uprising and more disruption. And India is almost an exception where we don't see the big investment in places like the Philippines and places like Africa. But so we're going to see multiple types of opposition. You're going to see nonviolent opposition led by Gandhi with hunger strikes and boycotts and that kind of stuff that's going to influence American civil rights leaders. But you're also going to see people rising up and fighting just as every other nationalist movement ever had. And so these are some of the characters that are going to become important during the scene. You're going to have, Mandela and Ho Chi Minh, Gandhi, and Nasser, and all sorts of these important characters, these different independence movements. Again, some going the nonviolent route, some going the violent route. And one of the challenges for these becoming independent countries is that you're throwing off these big powers. To do that, you've got to really build a strong coalition. Well, the problem is that you've got these different ethnic groups that are kind of thrown together, and the only thing that they really have in common is that they wanted independence. Um, they don't really share common economic views. A lot of them don't share common religion. They sometimes don't even share a common language. And so when we say it's pushed by nationalism, this becomes a problem later because we know there's that dark side of nationalism as far as, who's in the nation, and we're going to see ethnic cleansing and things like that. Some other big challenges going back to colonial times is economics, where these colonies have been set up to benefit the mother country, which means that there hadn't been an investment in infrastructure that dealt with anything other than helping the mother country get more goods to market. There wasn't this idea of, well, we should give them a diverse economy that can survive bad years and good years and economic shocks. No, instead, your new nation only really knows how to do one or two things. Like you might only grow just coffee, or just bananas, as is common in Latin America, or just palm oil in Africa, or just sugarcane in parts of Africa. And when you do that, it's really bad long-term agriculture policy. But the mother country didn't care because they were getting the benefit. But now that you're a newly independent country and you haven't invested in jobs and education, really puts you in a bad spot economically. Politically, because of your lack of education system, because the colonial powers didn't let you have an education system. You don't have trained leadership. You don't have an experience with democracy. So you're going to see a lot of democracy fail here and fall back into dictatorships or into autocracies. And then finally, you've got these ethnic challenges. You've got these groups that, have for centuries been opposed to each other that are now trying to run a country together. You've also got these people that were in power during the colonial. They don't want to give up their power, and so they're going to be trying to influence that. And so we see terrible things like the Rwandan genocide. We see conflict in Israel as that Jewish state is formed on what used to be Palestinian land. And so there's conflict there from the very get go. And then you see in South Africa where you had this minority population of whites, about 20% of the population, have all of power because they didn't want to give it up as South Africa became independent. So all of these issues um, create challenges that last to the present day in places like Latin America, Africa, and Asia. And that's where we're going to leave it for today.